Hey everyone. A couple months ago, we kind of snuck in a little utility into Cortex. Um, so we did do a video on how to use Postgres as your Cherwell data with Cortex. And as part of that, we had a little utility that converted your data from Microsoft SQL Server into a Postgres database. And we showed off a little utility that we called Cortex Util. Um, and we showed it in in that context. But actually, Cortex Util has been around for quite a while. It's something that we've been using internally to do some of the little maintenance tasks that we commonly do with primarily with databases. And in this video, I want to show how you can use Cortex Util to restore a ZAR file, CZAR, the Cherwell uh, compressed archive file that is typically used to store like the structure and maybe lookup tables from your system. So if you have a ZAR file and don't have access to Cherwell but want to extract it into SQL Server, you can use this little utility. Now, there are some caveats about that I'll mention toward the end of the video. So make sure you stay till the end to know when you might need a little bit of extra assistance with this little ZAR utility. But before we get into the meat of it, I want to remind you all that we do have the Cortex users group every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We also have our Discord server, the Cortex community, where we talk about Cortex, asynchronously. You don't have to join at a specific time every week to talk about Cortex. You can ask questions whenever you have them, or in some cases, whenever you're awake, because we are worldwide, right? And 10 a.m. Pacific on Tuesday doesn't always work for everyone, especially, I think, our friends in the west coast of Australia and India and that sort of thing. It's even kind of late for our friends in Europe. Um, so make sure you check out those resources. We also have a few other things coming up, like a webinar at the end of June. I believe it's June 25th. I think that's a Wednesday. That will also be at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We're doing a webinar on moving from Cherwell to GLPI. So, as you may know, we are a GLPI partner. We're really excited about that. We think that's a great uh, platform to go to from Cherwell. But there is a whole webinar all about that. I hope to see you there. Now, let's talk about using the Cortex util to extract a ZAR file into a database. So I'm going to switch over to my terminal, and hopefully this font is big enough. Unfortunately, I can't make it any bigger. Um, I am using a Linux machine, but this works just as well on Windows. I haven't really shown the Linux version of Cortex all that much, so I figured I would use that for a demo here. But I'm logged into this machine. There really isn't much going on here. I installed SQL Server, the Linux version of SQL Server, um, and I downloaded the Linux version of Cortex, extracted that into this folder here, and then obviously I have a ZAR because we're going to be extracting a ZAR file, and I have an XML file which will become uh, relevant in a little bit. I see it's hidden by the video, but you don't need to see exactly what that is. Um, it's a systemtables.xml. So let's first go into the Cortex directory and now first off, here's everything in Cortex, right? And if you're familiar with Cherwell, you know that a .NET app typically has tons and tons of files. So this is no different. However, at the very top of this list, you'll notice, of course, Cortex, that's the main executable. And if you're running with IIS, this just kind of gets hidden away. All of this just kind of magically happens behind the scenes. Um, but now there's also this new file, Cortex Util. And again, this has been in Cortex in the distributed version of Cortex since 2.0. Um, so obviously this is 2.1.2 that I've downloaded, um, but it's been out there since 2.0. So if you're running 2.0, you'll see this, and obviously any newer versions as well. So let's start off by running Cortex util, and I'm going to say dash dash help. I'm going to try, and we get some help information. So for this command line utility, we're actually using the same framework that Microsoft uses for their .NET command line utility. And it follows a lot of the same conventions as a lot of modern command line utilities. Docker operates very similarly. Obviously, the .NET command line tool operates like this because it is actually the same library being used. And basically, this syntax of command, subcommand, and then options. Um, so here uh, we see the top level commands that we can provide to the Cortex util uh, command line utility. Uh, the database uh, command is where we find things like, um, wow, it's giving away all the secrets because I've already done them. Database is where we find things like the migrate utility, which is used to copy from Microsoft SQL to Postgres. We've seen that in a previous video. Um, Another one that we find here is this extract system schemas. Now, this is significant in this for the purposes of this video because that's actually how we generated that system schemas or system tables.xml. Um, Basically, we need an existing Cherwell system to generate that system tables.xml. If you don't have an existing Cherwell system and you need the system tables.xml, let me know. I have one that I've been using. Realistically, this ZAR utility, it doesn't do exactly the same thing as the Cherwell system restore utility. Um, because we just needed to cut some corners to get some things up and running. Um, and we really just needed to be able to read data into a database, get a bunch of tables stood up. And the main reason that I built it is because I'm running on a Mac. You can see, the Mac menu bar across the top. The Cherwell System Restore Utility doesn't run on Mac, so I needed some way to create a database from a ZAR file. So let's get to actually creating a database from a ZAR file. And I'm going to just, uh, Warp is trying to tell me what the command is. And this is the actual command. And I'm actually going to hide my face for a second so that you can see the full command. So here we have Cortex util ZAR, and then the subcommand is restore. And then it takes a few options. One is file, which is the ZAR file that we need to restore. Connection string, which is the actual connection string. And I notice I'm actually going to have to add something to this connection string because I just installed SQL Server and it's using a self-signed certificate, which the SQL client library doesn't really like. And then the system tables parameter, which does need to point to that system tables XML. This basically creates all of the trebuchet tables, and that XML file basically has a bunch of SQL statements inside it that creates those system tables. And then I've also included the drop option. The reason I've included the drop option is just in case I have a database called Cortex there, I just want to drop that database first before trying to restore the ZAR. If you don't have an existing database with that same name, you don't have to use that option. And if you want to make sure that you don't accidentally drop an important database, you can, of course, omit that option as well. Um, but now, before I execute this command, I know that I have to add trust server certificate equals true. And we should be able to run this. And you can see it starts out by creating all of the trebuchet tables. This is both because they are needed for the foundation for a system And because they actually show up first in the ZAR file, that definition. Uh, and then when we get to trebuchet defs, actually, it happened in a few of the other tables as well. But trebuchet defs is noticeable because there are just so many records there. Same thing with this trebuchet platform resource. There are so many records here that it takes a while. So every so often, we're printing out dots just to show that progress is happening. It creates all the trebuchet tables. And now this particular ZAR that I'm using is a full database czar. So you can see as we're going through each of the business object tables, it is creating records for all of the records that came from that database. Um, if you use a structure only czar or a structure and lookup czar, you'll see different output. Structure and lookup, obviously, most of the tables will, well, most of the tables probably are lookup tables. All of the lookup tables will have data in them, but many of the other tables won't have data in them. So they'll just be created and then it'll say done. And it just creates a table. And obviously there's no data to add to that. If it's a structure only czar, it creates all of the system tables and then and populates them based on what's in the czar file, and then creates all of the other business object tables. Now, I have seen a couple hiccups here and there as we've encountered databases, especially older databases that didn't have all of the same configuration as, maybe some of the newer ones, maybe some post-globalization and that sort of thing. We have run into some issues, and in some cases, it hasn't been. Uh, a real big issue. It hasn't interfered with the ability of, say, Cortex to work. Um, Sometimes it's able to create tables and not populate them, or a record gets missed, or something like that. Um, if you run into an issue, let us know. We'll do everything we can to try to fix it. Um, the other thing to watch out for is because we're using a basically a non-standard way of creating those system tables. We're using that system tables.xml. Depending on where you get the system table definitions from, um, you might actually not actually be creating the system tables with the same schema as is actually defined um, in the ZAR file. So let's say you have a ZAR file from 8.1 and system tables from a much newer version. There are some columns that aren't part of the database in 8.1 that got added somewhere along the line. You're going to end up with them in your database, but obviously they weren't part of your original system. That's something that we might fix at some point in the future. Again, because of the use case that we're using this ZAR utility for, it's not super critical for us. It has meant that there have been a few cases where the database that we create in our dev system isn't exactly the same as the database in a production system, but we've been able to get around that. So yeah, that's basically the Cortex util. If you want to know more about uh, this command, you can always go Cortex util ZAR restore dash dash help. And you can see, again, the description of all the options that I used, right? The file, connection string, the system tables, and drop. Drop is optional. The other three are required. Um, and there are a couple other subcommands in here. Um, Again, many of them are just utilities that were helpful for us. Um, but this is public. We have shipped it. You're more than welcome to go poke around and see what's there. Um, and let us know if you have any questions. Let us know if you run into any issues. You can certainly report bugs about this tool. This is intended to be customer facing. Uh, so, yeah, let us know what you find. And again, remember, we've got the Cortex users group every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We have the Discord server, and we've got webinars coming up. We post on LinkedIn. We have more videos on this YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Uh, We put out a bunch of different videos about Cortex, about GLPI, about other stuff we're doing in the IT space. Um, we're really having fun with this, and we hope that it shows on the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very, very soon in the next one.